It is a holiday. It is the start of a special time. It is October 31st as we record this. So for everybody celebrating, I want to wish you happy Ethan season. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name is Elliot Smith, the Black Man Twitter Yankee Gunner. I guess technically it's already Halloween as well, but Ethan season is what we're really here to celebrate. And we will celebrate it. We will celebrate our win in the League Cup, the most important competition of the season when the game is going on, until we forget about it until the next game, but that's okay. The draw has been made. If you want, you can listen to the instant reaction from last night where Paul and I vamped for 20 minutes with nothing to say, waiting for the draw to happen. So we just kind of chatted, tried to stretch, tried to vamp, and then the draw happened. And then we spent 2 minutes talking about the draw and made all of that wasted time worthwhile. So I'm really selling it to you, huh? But we did do something really fun. Tim and I did a stock market report, basically. On our instant reaction, we do stocks rising and stocks falling. We did a season-long evaluation of every player that's really relevant to the squad. So if you want to check that out, that is a fun episode. We sort of started at a par value, $100, 100 quid, 100 euro, whatever your currency is, wherever you are. And we sort of talked about, are they up? Are they down? Where are they relative to things? So it was a fun thing and something that I hope we can do again with Clive and with Paul and get a sense of where we are with players. We do have power rankings tomorrow with Clive, where we will just probably laugh at United and Spurs mostly, but there could be other stuff in there. So you want to tune in. You never know. We'll probably talk about the press conference that Mikel Arteta holds tomorrow as well, because as we record this today, he's not doing a press conference. So we could make up what we think he's going to say, probably something about the standards, but we don't know. So we'll have to see. Just want to say that we love you. We hope you're doing well wherever you are. Don't eat unwrapped candy, but eat plenty of other candy and just have a wonderful day as things feel pretty good in the Arsenal world and we head into another interesting period. Newcastle away, Inter away, Chelsea away. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the academy. We will talk about the victory over Preston with Clive. You can find him on Twitter at ClivePFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
And of course, we will do it with another person, a person who has not yet been heretofore on the podcast, but is today. And I am thrilled to welcome Art de Roche from The Athletic, covers the academy. So, someone who is very qualified to be here. And Art, it is my pleasure to have you on.
Thanks for having me for my debut. And hope everyone's doing well on Thursday, October 31st, which is the way it's said in the Batman movie that came out a couple of years ago. So, if anyone's a fan of the Batman, I hope they enjoyed that.
Yeah, we're watching that Penguin show now that's out, and it sort of picks up from where the Batman left off. I will tell you, Art, that talking pace, you got to get it quicker. You got to get going.
Sorry.
We'll work on it. We'll get you in wind sprints. No, I'm kidding, obviously. Speak at a normal human level. Okay, so we'll start with the Preston game. I don't think we have to go too deep on every aspect of it, but there are certainly interesting things, and why bury the lead? Ethan Nwaneri starts, and Ethan Nwaneri shines, and I think this is something that everybody feels pretty strongly about, that this is a talent that is not necessarily just for the future, but maybe for now. So I'll just start with the obvious one, Art, which is how impressed were you with this performance vis-a-vis what you expect from this player, having watched him a lot?
Yeah, I was very encouraged because throughout the past few weeks, everyone knows that the noise around him has just been getting to a ridiculous level. And I think where I was most impressed was when he came on against Bournemouth. 2-0 down with 10 men, Mikel Arteta decides to throw him on. I was quite surprised. And there you saw he still had personality in his play, which I thought was a very good sign. Then going into yesterday's game against Preston, you saw that personality from the start of the game. And with his goal, I think for those who've watched him for a while, they weren't too surprised. But of course, for people who are just kind of landing into the Ethan Nwaneri sphere, they would have been like almost, wow, what's this? But that's a finish. He tried against Leicester. He also scored a very similar goal against France in the under-17s European Championships this summer. So it's not something that's new to Ethan. It's just really encouraging that he's confident enough to take that on against men, and we saw how well it came off. So in terms of his performance overall, was also good to see that he had a few other chances. Obviously, he hit the bar, had another decent finish that was offside, unfortunately, by Havertz, I believe. But all in all, very encouraging evening's work. Yeah,
absolutely brilliant. And on his goal, Mikel said he did it yesterday in training, so we're used to that. Come on, man. We're not used to that. He nearly did it against Leicester, to be fair. I do think I like what Mikel said, though. in terms of trying to frame this as a group thing. He said he's a big talent. He's got the right attitude. He's got the right players and context around him. And we need to make sure that we put brick by brick in the right order, but we have some player here. And I think that's good because while he's clearly a talent who's ready to help now, there has to be a measured approach to the development of a 17-year-old that protects them along the way. And I think it's clear from Mikel's comments that he is enthralled to the talent, but he understands the responsibility of building him up at the appropriate level. Clive obviously will stay on Ethan for a bit. One thing that Mikel said that I think is a big tester, he said, you can see that his teammates want to give him the ball. That to me is a litmus test for any sort of advanced area player, actually really any player on the pitch. We see it sometimes with defenders, right? A center back who's not comfortable on the ball and his teammates just won't give him the ball or play around him, essentially. When teammates want to give you the ball, that's a sign of huge respect. And the thing that really stood out to me, not Ethan's goal, the one where he hits the crossbar. He's in a tiny little pocket of space in the box, making a clever run, and Jorginho doesn't pass him the ball. He fires the ball at him with pace into a tight pocket of space. Ethan kills it immediately with the outside of the boot. And then that gives him the ability to open his body and just miss another sensational goal. So for you, Clive, is there an aspect of his performance or his talent that you want to particularly highlight? Maybe even in terms of what we could use in the team most urgently.
Yeah, so to be honest, as Art alluded to, what he did yesterday is almost signature stuff, right? On that right-hand side, receiving it, first touch, unbelievable. Sometimes he does a no-touch turn out to his left foot and bangs it top corner. I think that might have been a France goal, Art, this year. I've been looking at him for quite a while. And if anything, should I tell you the most encouraging thing that I saw this year with him?
Could you tell me the most discouraging thing first?
No. The most encouraging thing, because this is really important, right? I don't know if you remember the pre-season game. It may have been the Bournemouth game when he started that game, and he started in his normal position on the right-hand side, advancing and doing his stuff, combining with the right winger, and I think it was Vieira on the day. But then late in the game, he went to the left-hand side of the pitch. Remember? Art's nodding because he's got a great memory. And he went to the left-hand side. And I was really keen to see how he did there. And he was almost as good, right? And that was more of a two-way position. So at that moment in time, I just started smiling to myself because I know now if he can play on the left-hand side and the right-hand side, and he can play on the ball and off the ball, and he can defend. He can defend in a front two press. He can defend in a double six position when we go 4-4-2. Nothing else to see here. The manager's already started to develop him in these roles. And then once you have that player on your hands, you can do what you like. Because all the stuff you saw against Preston, trust me, that's in the post. Art's just smiling to himself. That's in the post. I wasn't sure if his power would translate into adult football this quickly, but the pace of that ball that went into that net, the goalkeeper just waved it on through, and that tells you the power's there, right? So now is the power there with Premiership gymnastic athlete goalkeepers. We'll see, right? Because there is a level difference, So, but yeah, that's the next phase for him, Elliot. It's off the ball, real tackling, retaining possession. He sprints into the press, no problem, because he's got gears. And if he can play left and right side, we have a player that we can do anything we like with. So, to be honest, as we were speaking off mic, there is no secrets in this world. And this kid has been coming a while, and the whole country knows about him. And I'm glad he's at our club.
Yeah, so I hate to throw this at you, Art, but I'm going to do it because I think it's important to have proper context. Because I think there are going to be a lot of people, and there already have been people, that are sort of saying, I don't understand why he's not starting every single game right now in the absence of Martin Odegaard. And to be fair, when we get glimpses of him, that seems like a reasonable opinion. But glimpses are a look through a keyhole, and Mikel gets to see the whole room, right? He's in the room with him. He sees it. You've probably seen more of him than most of the people listening. So I'm going to ask you something, not to knock Ethan. He is a superstar talent in the making. But if you had to list maybe the areas where there is improvement to happen, that may be a reason we shouldn't rush him into the team. Are there some areas of improvement you might highlight and say, when I watch him, I think these are the places where he's going to still develop to become a regular in the first team where he can't be denied?
I'd say it's less so the emphasis being on Ethan and where he needs to develop, and more so the context of the squad and what's happened to it at the start of the season. When you look at Martin not being there, I think that's a really big factor, because if you remember back to the game against West Ham last season, who was the guy that who's given him the ball the most? It was Martin Ødegaard. And I do feel like that's a bit of context that people may not feel is important, but it can be. And in terms of him and in areas for improvement, one thing that was focused on last season was what Clive mentioned in his work off the ball defensively. And speaking to Mehmet Ali, the under-21s head coach, he spoke about how do you translate that physicality from Premier League 2 games to the Premier League, and knowing not just he can make those defensive actions, but knowing the right time to make them. Because I remember the Manchester United game in America, there were some times where he joined the press really well, but then there were other times where Manchester United just played the ball around him and it was quite easy for them to get through. And that's not a criticism of him. He's a 17-year-old. These things are going to happen. It's just about learning, I guess, the right moments to make the right actions. And that's something that will come with time. One thing I would say is he is actually ahead of Bukayo Saka in terms of the development in real time. So he's obviously played more minutes than Bukayo Saka did at his age, which is 17 and 234 days now, I believe.
That's what I was going to say.
So yeah, I think it's really hard to, I guess, be patient in real time. But I don't feel like patience should be mistaken for just letting this slide. I think it's really a nuanced situation that Mikel Arteta hasn't actually had to deal with, because a lot of the Saka development happened before he actually arrived as head coach and then manager.
Yeah, Clive, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, something I think about, just as I think about the pod pre, this young player I think he was 12 when Arteta arrived. So you could say Arteta's had a lot more direct involvement in his development, working with his coaches. We don't know. We can guess how long he's been in training. It's probably been a couple of years. He had a look at training in the first team, which has allowed him to get to this level of physicality and intensity and pressing, etc. So if anything, for those people saying he needs to start him, actually, this player is almost the one he's had the most involvement with, because Saka was already there, right? I can remember Saka's first game as a right winger against Wolves. I wasn't sure if that was his position. I mean, how stupid does that sound at the time? Do you know what I mean? And he slotted his goal.
He's going to make it left back eventually. Don't worry, Clive. We'll get there.
I know, but seriously, it took a while for him to get that position, didn't it? He just landed in that position. I mean, Art may know more details than me. And when he scored that goal, remember he topped it. I thought, yeah, he's done well there. Let's see how he does. And look where he is today. He looks like a god on that right-hand side, So this is why I would leave my mind open to development. That's why I was so pleased to see the left 8 thing. You just don't know in life, man. You don't know in life. See how people develop when they get older and what comes out of them when they're at their extremities of the top level. That's when you find out what you've got. And at the young boy, he seems obviously quite good at the top end of the pitch. So that's pretty clear to me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just on that positional stuff. So in the year, or the season, I should say, that Arsenal under-18s went to the FA Youth Cup, obviously Ethan had a lot of involvement with that team, but also the under-21s that year. And he played across at least 4 positions in that season. So off the right, in that kind of pocket, which is, I've now heard pocket referenced with Ethan about 1 million times, I believe, from Per Mertesacker, Mehmet Ali. They just constantly talk about pockets. He also played off the left, and in the Youth Cup, he played up front as well. And I think all that exposure that year was really interesting to just see how he reacted in those positions and those areas. And then the season after, which is last season, that's when they really dialed into those pocket themes. And he scored a hat-trick against Leicester at the start of the season, Leicester under-21s. pretty much identical position for every goal, kind of just in that edge of the box area where he can just finish very nicely. So I think that development of giving him taste of different areas, and I'm sure we'll go into it a bit more in terms of flexibility, but understanding the role, the defensive role of a winger as well, to then have a better understanding when he's centrally. I think it's all really encouraging signs for him personally.
Yeah, it's so interesting because in Bukayo Saka, I think we have a player who we all believe could play 8 if that role was given to him. And Ethan looks like a player who could play right wing if he needed to, in the sense that I think they both have that phenomenal balance, two-footedness, really nice patience and tempo in pockets, right? In pockets of space, and can both get it onto their left foot and kill you with it, right? But in Ethan, we have someone who's developing into that 8 role. And in Saka, we have someone who's maybe the best right winger in world football. So why would you change brilliance? So it's a good problem to have. I think the question that everybody's going to be asking is, what is the path, right? Pathways are a thing we think about a lot as we look at someone like Cheeto going to United, no accounting for taste, but we want Ethan to come through at the right time and in the right way. But there is a pretty good player that plays right 8 for Arsenal that's back on the grass and maybe back as soon as Inter. We've bought a guy from Spain that we think is going to play left 8 quite a bit. We spent £105 million on the other guy who's been playing left 8. I don't think you'd want Ethan playing left wing or center forward, and Bukayo Saka probably not ready to give up his place to another academy player just yet. So, Clive, I'm eager to see Ethan play in the first team, and I think there are people that are more than eager. They're clamoring for it. But I sort of wonder what you think the pathway is. I mean, as we've seen, injuries happen, fatigue happens. There's a lot of competitions. How does Ethan find his way to be more of a regular in the first team?
See, this is what I have to deal with. First 11 obsessed Elliot.
First 11. And I want to be clear. Don't say he can come off the bench. That doesn't count. It only counts if he's named in the first 11. That's all that. Because, when I go to FBref, I sort by starts, Clive. So how am I supposed to sort if I can't do that.
Yeah, but Elliot's not alone, according to my Twitters this morning.
Speak for the everyman.
So, I mean, let's be honest. The reason why I'm so keen to see him have that sort of exposure in different positions, so we see more of him in more different scenarios, and looking back to the Saka Wolves game and look at how his physicality now and his height and his body change, his difference in him. He was such a child back then that he's not a child anymore. He's got the captain's armband on and he looks like one of the 2 or 3 leaders of the squad. The only thing he needs is time. And when he finishes growing,
it's already pretty filled out. To be fair, I mean that is not a small 17-year-old.
That is not who he's going to be. That is not who he's going to be. When he's finishes growing, and he stretches out, and he moves on to his second razor blade, then we're going to know if we got a player, right? So and we'll know everything about him. You just got to give time and look at the core things that he has. And there are things to learn, but so what? I mean, I'm so excited because the core things are there, particularly for me. Change of pace, and I think that's so important that everyone in the Premier League is quick. His ability to stop and start, to move, to unbalance people, to move past people. Every one of them are the right weight, the right height, the right speed. Every one of them, all of them. You know what I mean? And but what can you do to move elite athletes around? How can you get there ahead of them? How can you read the game? How can you unbalance them, freeze them, move the ball, get it back? Has he got personality to do that? Well, we've all seen he's got that. We've all seen he's got that at his age. Has he got personality yet? He's still developing that as a young man. He's 17. He probably sits in the dressing room really, really quiet. Didn't say a word yet. His communication's not quite there. It's all to come. It's all to come. People need to wait and trust the experts. There is expertise here which takes years to develop about how to bring young players into an adult environment. You've got to get it right. And when I see it wrong, I mean, Spurs have a young kid right now. You know him, in Mikey Moore, really good bouncy player off left-hand side. To me, he reminds me of Smith Rowe when he was younger. Do you agree with me, Art?
Yeah. That's all I could see.
All I can exactly the same. The way he carries the ball, he carries it almost behind him sometimes. The way his socks is, he was like, Smith Rowe was that quick when he was that age. It's the same player, honestly. Arrives in the box, slot, left foot shots, right foot top corner shots. I've seen it all before, right? And sometimes he played really well in European game. Played against Palace, I think. Probably a bit too soon for him. I think he got the hook, right? Now, he's not done, but you got to get it right. I remember Spurs had a young player called Pap Sarr. They gave him a debut against us. Got ruined in that game. He's out there playing. They had to sit him for a while. This is not an exact science. I tend to trust the people that see them, and because they know best, right? So, yeah, that's just my thoughts. I'm prepared to be patient, massively so, because my line, Elliot. It takes. He's been here since he was. What age he joined out? Was it like 9?
9, 8, 9. So he joined May 2015.
Right.
8. So he would have been 8.
Yeah. So
that's
here we
pretty,
are.
because my birthday's in May. That's pretty close to when I turned 21. I remember it.
Very, very similar. Very similar. So what's it? So 2015 to 2024, right? That's a lot. That's a long time nurturing somebody. Not to get overexcited because he's stuck one in the top corner. Take your time. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing.
I think the reality of it is, though, every time he's played this season, he's looked this good. I can't think of a time he's come on where he said, he's a little off it. Because the one thing about young players that I think you have to really keep in mind, the biggest difference between a 26, 27-year-old player and a 17, 18-year-old player is consistency. Consistency of level, right? Like most senior experienced players deliver performances. They're not always the exact same, but I think they're in a pretty tight band, right? They don't just have games where they vanish. They don't have games where they're superstars. They tend to be in a tighter band. You can predict their performance levels. Young players will star one game. Maybe their power levels are lower than the next game, and so they don't have the running power. I mean, I do think some people said they thought Ethan looked like he was cramping up on the hour mark. 17-year-olds are going to run out of puff 11v11 on these big pitches against men with all the adrenaline pumping, right? So you have to be thoughtful. If you start a 17-year-old in a Premier League game, you have to have it in your mind. This is a guy I'm probably going to be taking off at 60 minutes. How does that change my tactical plan? How does that change what I can do? Would I rather keep him on the bench and have him as an asset for the last 30, right? So these are tactical decisions that a manager has to make. One thing that I think is really exciting and interesting about him, though, is there's a lot of different ways we can configure our midfield, and we have a lot of different options. But in Martin Odegaard, we very much have a box-to-box player who's just as comfortable running back towards his goal as he is running towards the opposition goal. And in Declan Rice, we have a space monster who can go snuff everything out. I do think this Leo Trossard role he's been playing would be an interesting one for Nwaneri. And I just want to touch on this quickly, Art. This 4-2-4 shape that's developed absent Odegaard, right? Where we've had Partey, Rice, Leo, and Kai kind of making up the box.
Mm-hmm.
If you shift Kai over to the left and you have a Odegaard, Rice, Kai, and Nwaneri box there. I'm not saying for every game, but something we can do. That Leo role, but just more on the right half space than the left half space. Could you see Nwaneri playing that role? Almost support strikery, kind of, one goes, one stays with Kai and partnering him with him there. Because I think Odegaard can certainly do the running to cover all the space. Rice cleans everything up. And then I think you get just even more dynamism than maybe even Leo gives you. Of course, Leo's been very reliable with end product. But what do you think of that role? If we stayed in a 4-2-4 shape, could Ethan play as one of those two, similar to the role that Trossard's been playing?
Yeah, I think he could do that without question. It's obviously a very different profile to Trossard, which I think is actually quite exciting because actually I'd say a very different profile to everyone in that attacking unit because the way I put it in my head is he glides with the ball. And even Saka, I don't think Saka glides. I think Saka is very powerful with his running, very explosive, whereas with Ethan, there's an elegance there, which comes with the ability to stop, start, and do so very seamlessly. So I think he could go into that kind of area of the pitch and survive without question. It also opens yourself up to him to be more of a goal threat because that is almost the area where, so the example I mentioned about the Leicester hat-trick last season, it's pretty much that space, edge of the box. If he's if he's entering there, I think he's very comfortable. So yeah, it's really, really interesting to see that shape develop just by itself without Ødegaard. And then if you were to maybe go back to a free, I do think that left eight that Clive mentioned is a possibility as well. Even when you look at Marino, recruiting him and his age, he's late 20s. So I'm not too worried about that space being filled for too long, because if you look back to preseason, left eight, you'd probably assume, oh, okay, Vieira would play that. No, Ethan was playing left eight against Manchester United. That's where he got his assist for Jesus, with some very intelligent play as well. So I'm not too worried about where he fits in, because I think he can do a lot in this team, and he has the intelligence to do that. I believe.
Yeah, it's very rare that superstar level talents get kept out of teams for too long, and eventually you make it obvious that you need to be playing. And I think he will probably go that route. I'm going to stay with you just for a second, Art, and then I do want to get to some other things from this game and get on to Newcastle. We could do a whole pod just on Nwaneri, but I don't know that that's sensible in light of the way things are progressing. Let's just pump the brakes a little, not overhype it. The kid is good. He's going to make it. And we may see more of him as soon as this weekend. But you've written an article, speaking of Per Mertesacker, a little bit about the competitiveness at the academy level now for talent, going all the way down to sort of bringing the kids in at that age 8, age 9 range. And this is the next sort of untapped market in a way, right? Like there's a lot of inefficiencies that have been competed out of the transfer market at the senior level, right? 100 million if you want the star talents. There's not a lot of bargains. Just ask Manchester United. Look at what they've paid for players that are not star talents, candidly. And everybody's kind of doing it. So if inefficiencies get competed out in one place, you go find the next inefficiency. And that seems to be at the youth level. We saw it with Cheeto, this summer, for example, with United. So can you maybe just talk people through, obviously, please go read Art's article in The Athletic, but a little bit of what Per had to say and what you picked up from the conversation you had with him?
Yeah, it was a really interesting conversation. It wasn't just me who was speaking to him. It was myself, Sam Dean at The Telegraph, and Kaya Kainak at Football London as well. And the point was put to Per about, so with Ethan, Miles, Bukayo, who've been at the club since 8, 9 years old, how can you really tell at that age? And Per took it quite well, to be fair. He joked about himself, saying at his age, you probably wouldn't have been able to tell. But now the technical level is so good that you can tell. What is actually more important is looking at a player at that age's behaviors, looking at their parents, and kind of taking in the whole picture. And with Per himself, he said that he actually does go and put on presentations for parents at that age. He doesn't give them any promises that their son will become the next Bukayo, because that would be irresponsible. But Bukayo, now Ethan, possibly Miles as well, are there as inspirations. So I think when you look at he didn't want to call it under 8s, under 9s transfer market. He just used that term in a more light-hearted way.
Yeah,
but
makes sense.
Arsenal are in London, so they're competing with Chelsea, Tottenham, which people would consider to be their big rivals. But I think also people overseas might not understand Fulham's academy is really strong. QPR's academy is really strong. So is Crystal Palace's. Their reputations are actually probably, I'd say they're among the best in the country for how they develop players. So these are the clubs that Arsenal are competing with in London. So that's where getting those messages right at that stage are really important, especially because Per Mertesacker went on to say getting it right at that age group can really kind of build the foundation for your youth team throughout the years into under 18s and under 21s football. And now we're seeing it with Ethan and Miles. And before we move on, I just wanted to kind of touch on the difference between Ethan and Miles as well, because I think it's really interesting and it's not really been brought up a lot, because Clive mentioned how Ethan's probably a bit more of a shy character, whereas Miles, on the other hand, when speaking to Mikel or even people who have been around the academy, they describe Miles as a huge character, someone who's really inquisitive. And Ethan is demanding as well, but I think it's really important to take into account these individuals are probably quite different, and how you deal with them coming into an adult situation, as Clive mentioned, is really important, because not everybody's going to react the same way. So I think there's loads of challenges there, from coming in at the age of 8 or 9 to how they become young adolescent men, and how they kind of survive in a man's world as well.
And here I was thinking that Ethan was just doing a bit, that he never smiles in any photograph that's taken of him, but maybe that's just his shyness coming out. One quick thing from you, Art, and then I'll pop it over to you, Clive, obviously. With Miles, I don't want to use the word unfair, but do you think it's for people that are watching Miles trying to assess him, like, I could be wrong. I don't think he's a left back, and I don't think that's his future. And he's being asked to play there, and has been asked to play there, like, to finish off games against Liverpool, right? And like standing next to Kivior. It's not exactly Gabriel next to you, ushering you through the game, right? Those are tricky situations. Do you think people need to just understand that in Miles, we have a very, very talented midfielder as well, whose future likely will be at a different position. And what we see from him at left back is just maybe a testament to the manager's trust in his talent and his personality to go step out into a position that isn't quite as natural for him?
Yeah, so I asked Per about that positional flexibility. And with Miles, he said, okay, now he's being asked to play left back. When I, Per, made my debut, it was at right back, and I'm a centre back. He never played right back again. Obviously, the situation for Miles is a little bit different, but he's been prepped for that. I remember, again, the season where the under-18s went into the FA Youth Cup final. In that run, he was playing in midfield under Jack Wilshere, and Jack Wilshere mentioned how he can do things that you can't coach, and how valuable that is in midfield. And Wilshere himself said he sees him as a midfielder in the future. But in that same season, he's still being asked to play left back by Mehmet Ali in the under-21s. And it's really important, because there are games where I was at where he struggled a little bit. And it's not a bad thing. It's just he was getting used to that when he played there against Leverkusen as well in pre-season. Mikel Arteta actually had quite a detailed conversation with him on the touchline at full time. And he said it was about defensive details. I think when he came on against Shakhtar, what I was really impressed with was how proactive he was in his defending, and you could see the character that everyone talks about. Yesterday, when I can't remember who came on, which is really bad. Sorry, Aiden Heaven. When Aiden Heaven came on, Kivior went to left back, Miles is in midfield. And I think these are things where it's a little bit less straightforward than with Ethan, because you're dealing with someone who can play in the bottom 2/3 of the pitch, and the pathway may be a little bit different there. But again, he's someone that I think has really stood up to the challenge of making his first steps in men's football. And where we get to down the line, who knows? Again, he's someone I probably see as a deeper midfielder who can drive with the ball. That's his USP, his ability to receive the ball in a tight situation, hold a player off and drive. It just might take a little while before we see it regularly in men's football.
Yeah, and I just think for people that want to size up these players so quickly, you're seeing Ethan get in the box and shoot, which is exciting. You're seeing Miles Lewis-Skelley be asked to go stand on the wing and try to figure out how to stop Trent Alexander-Arnold from finding Nunez and Salah down the left, down our left hand, their right hand side. And like, that's a very different task for a player with a very different set of skills, but still a very talented player, getting minutes, having just turned 18 in very high leverage situations. And you cannot overstate the importance of like, hey, you've played left back against Liverpool with the game on the line at 18, basically 17, just turned 18. You're going to be fine when it's like Leicester at home and you're asked to play in midfield where you're comfortable in 6 months, time. So, Clive, there was a lot there. So rather than asking you a dumb question that you have to ignore, why don't I just say, what would you like to add to that really excellent bit by Art there?
Yeah, you just got to look for things that translate to the higher level. And both these players, they've got the ability to protect the ball with their lower bodies. When they put their legs in front of the ball, they're not getting kicked up in the air. I always think preseason is really important, Elliot. And I'll be honest with you, Ethan and Miles can protect the ball better than Fabio Vieira can, and I saw that in the summer. And it just makes me think, okay. And people who think preseason is just preseason, well, one's not at the club anymore, and two are. So what does that tell you how important preseason is? It's absolutely critical. And as soon as you see their ability to receive, protect, and the ball flows through somebody, and when they make a mistake, they're there again to receive it again. Oh, you got something. You got something. Do you know what I mean? Miles is a little bit more, for me, I think his better time will come when he has total physical confidence. And I think his physical potential is going to dictate his ceiling, because he's got this thing, this man-to-man contest gene. Art's nodding, he knows what I mean.
Dembele.
Yeah, that Dembele, he's got it, man. Case football stuff. He's got it. It's me and you. Get off me. Get off. Go to the gym. Go on, son. Get off. And he's got that. And again, it's just time. When he grows into his body and he can do that against anybody, then you've got something. You've really got something. That's the uncoachable bit, right? That's the gene that says I'll go anywhere with him, and he's going straight in. And so whereas Ethan's talent, I think, is easier to see. We can all see the one that can curl it in from 25 yards. We can all see that, and beat you. But I do think that to have both of them at the same time is ridiculous. Really, it really is.
Yeah,
we just got to nurture them along.
And don't undersell how important it is, because you look at what it meant to Tottenham, for example, to find a striker from their academy that was one of the best strikers in the league and not have to go spend the money on that. It allowed them to build a squad that was able to win nothing. So like that was, you just can't overstate the importance of things like that. For us, it might be a little different. We'll see. By the way, but before we move on, I want to pick the bones out of this game a little bit. There's some other performances to just highlight, and then I do want to get to Newcastle. We can shift away from Ethan and Miles' hype, even though there will be a lot more of it to come this season, I'm sure. I do just want to tip my cap to the over 5,000 Arsenal fans that made it to Preston on a very wet night and were in unbelievable voice. Just, beautiful to see, representing, getting out there. Meanwhile, you got Manchester City players on their bench laughing at losing and getting knocked out of the cup away. And I wonder what the City fans who traveled all the way down to London to watch their team, if there are any, and if they did, what they think of their players laughing on the bench as they get knocked out. Lost Savinho, by the way. Haven't seen an update on that, but he was stretchered off. Van de Ven, hamstring went pop, and I have to tip my cap to Clive, who literally said it was going to happen on a podcast. It was really good insight based on how the positions he's put in, what he's asked to do, the explosive run. You called the hamstring pop, and a lot
it's not hard to see. Just look at the green grass around him and his injury record, and do a quick sum, and go, okay, well that's only gonna. Romero's up the pitch with his cape on, and Van der Ven's back there holding the whole defense, mate. It's only a matter of time.
I also want to throw a quick shout out, kudos to both Casemiro and Bruno Fernandes, who did their best to play some of the worst football imaginable until they managed to get Ten Hag sacked, and then score a brace in a 5-2 victory over Leicester, as if to say, mate, we are so happy you're gone. How they didn't realize that guy had to go, I'll never know. All right, look, I am so mad at myself because Clive mentioned that when Ethan gets his second razor blade in, and I don't have a Manscaped ad to read, so I can't throw it with that. But I do have NordVPN to tell you about. And everybody loves this one. This is probably the favorite one we do, NordVPN. At this point, if you're not using a VPN, just use our Nord code and get it. If you ever see those videos on social where they're not available in your area, this makes them available in your area. If you ever want to watch, the daily match show, and it's not available in your area, you can do it. If you're out of the country and you want to come back and watch your football subscription, when I go to London, I want to be able to watch my NBC Peacock stuff because I can watch those 3 p.m. kickoffs, and I can use NordVPN to do it. It's an app. You click on the iPad, on the Android tablets, on the Android phones, iPhones, Mac, PC, makes no difference. It works, and it allows you to browse in the area you want. You can even sign up for streaming services in other regions where they cost less and save yourself money that way. Not to mention it's got threat protection, which let's face it, football fans sometimes watch their games on streams that, let's just say, are not the most well-known, and you want threat protection if you're going to those links. Well, here's the good news. NordVPN has a promo code for you. It's nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. You get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan and 4 additional months on top. So the discount and 4 months, and it's risk-free, and it has 30-day money-back guarantee. NordVPN.com/ArsenalVision. NordVPN.com/ArsenalVision. Once again, that's NordVPN.com/ArsenalVision. Clive, was that enough of that?
Indeed.
Got it. Okay. I said we'd pick the bones out of the Newcastle game. It's bone picking time. Sounds weird, but we'll go for it. So, Art, Gabriel Jesus, nice little instinctive volley, gets a goal, something I think he needed to just sort of get that weight off his shoulders. Looks lively. I don't want to overstate where Jesus is at this moment. But the thing with Jesus that always seems to be there, obviously, is the effort, the energy, the hustle, the commitment, the physicality, all the things that he can do physically seem like they're there. What's been missing, I think, is final third execution. You could probably say the same for Gabriel Martinelli to some extent as well. And final third execution it's the whole ball of wax at some point. But I think I look at Jesus and I see a player that maybe there's a glimmer of hope. So is he one of the silver linings from this game and from recent performances? How are you feeling about him getting a goal and maybe just looking like he might be coming back to something approaching usable form here?
Yeah, I think what stood out for me firstly was just that he was starting through the middle. When he started off the right against Shakhtar, I wasn't quite with it. I felt that he could beat his man occasionally, but then after he beat his man, he kind of ran out of ideas. And I just thought that game, you didn't need Havertz to start with Jesus starting as well. So I was happy that he was able to get a start through the middle, because aside from the goal, when he actually drifts from in to out, that's when you can see the rotations with Nwaneri that led to his goal. And then, as you said, with his finish, it was actually a very well taken goal. So I think for him, it was probably a really, really important night. And I'm not sure if you guys have seen his quotes from after the game, but he actually did seem quite insistent now on scoring goals, which
finally,
which is a little bit of a change in tone from the last time he spoke publicly. At the
didn't
back
go
end
down
of
well,
season.
did it? Saying my job is not to score goals. My primary strength is not scoring goals.
But to be fair to Jesus, he's always actually been quite honest in the way he's spoken about his game, and I do feel like it's an important. He can be important because he also brings something that other players don't have, which is almost like a freestyling footballer in the final third. I'm not saying I'd start him against Newcastle, but I'm glad that he had a good night.
Yeah, I do want to mention that Mikel wasn't shy about mentioning the drought himself on Jesus' first goal of the season. He said his first since January, I think. So it's been a long time. That's going to, I think, unlock that thing mentally and move on. I think he had a good performance tonight. Look, the fact that the manager referenced that and had that at the tip of his tongue means he's aware of it. Everybody's probably aware of it. And if everybody's aware of it, that means it's a thing. So getting the goal maybe stops it being a thing. I think like Kai getting that, let's say it, pity penalty, right? That kind of got him off the mark with Arsenal. Sometimes you just have to get the thing off your shoulders that the stick everyone's using to beat you. So we can sort of hope that is in fact what happens here. And we will indeed see if that is the case. Clive, let's talk about the other winger for a second though, Raheem Sterling. What are your thoughts on what you saw from him?
Okay. So the two are linked actually.
Yeah.
So
they sometimes literally physically, they are in the exact same spot as one another.
Exactly. So the two are linked, and Jesus first. I think he must be. It's his own fault, by the way. He should be upset that he's not doing a Trossard role and that double false nine.
Mm-hmm.
He can do it, and
I agree.
He's actually a better carrier. He's got double step overs all day. He should be, and he works back just as hard. And the reasons why he's not playing, he should ask himself that question: why am I not playing in that role? I can guess. I don't think he builds relationships as easy as Trossard does. Trossard's linked Martinelli and he's linked Havertz, and so he plays. And he sticks in the back of the net. So that's why you're not playing, mate. So start building relationships and stop running down the same alley as other people, which we all saw yesterday. And I think it's quite interesting, the Sterling and Jesus sort of dynamics. And by the way, I'm getting to know Sterling as an Arsenal player with different looks on him. But they're both quite individualistic in what they do. And it's so interesting. At the moment, they're just not quite connecting with chemistry. There was an unbelievable one yesterday when Jesus on left-hand side, double step over, and Sterling came in behind him. And he had a moment where he could go outside him or inside him.
He went inside.
He went inside him and blocked his shot.
That's terrible.
And all of us Arsenal people, we could have a little giggle because we're going to win the game. But mate, I'll tell you now, if I was an analyst at Arsenal, I'll be clipping that bit up and saying, right here, at this moment here, you decided to go on the inside. What made you do that? Well, probably because I'm 30 years of age and the inside was a bit nearer the goal. And that's what happens, right? So yeah, it's they learn to play with each other, and these things take time. And so yeah, I'm not worried. I keep looking at them, and when people are saying, "Oh, is Sterling doing okay? Is it working out? Is it?" I heard someone say he's got Willian vibes to him and all this. And I'm thinking, you know what I think? I think squad. Think squad, right? We bought Marino in, which made Havertz a forward, right? So we let Eddie go. So I look at Sterling and say, okay, sorry, I look at Jesus and say, you're in the squad now, you're doing Eddie's role almost, right? So are you better than Eddie in my mind? And that's what I'm going to judge you from. And with Sterling, we let Reece Nelson go. And I'm looking at Sterling and saying, am I getting more from you than I would do from Reece Nelson? Right, so am I getting more personality? Am I getting more touches? Am I getting more shots? Am I getting more crosses? And come on, you have to be honest and say yes. I am. We're not messing about here. We're adults, right? He's an adult player, and he's finding his way into a team. But he's not scared of the ball. He's not scared of the moment, right? So we have to go through it. If you look at it on that basis, then we're okay. But they need to score, don't they? They need to score to make it worthwhile. They need to score. It's important that they pull one out of the bag when we least expect it. And they've yet to do that yet. And so you have to just hold on, wait, and hope they do produce when it really matters.
Well, Kai sure did everything in his power to give Sterling a goal. Sterling conspired to let it get cleared off the line. I mean, not really his fault, obviously. It's a phenomenal defensive play. I think it's a bit of a Marmite performance from Sterling, just judging from what I've seen and talking to people. Some really connected to it, some didn't. I think Sterling has a bit of the Smith Rose about him in this sense. When he has the ball, what he does looks really good. I think he looks dangerous. I think he looks like he still has some burst, like he can beat a man. When we don't have the ball, I think there's a little sleeping going on, a little walking. And what's funny is, there was a moment in this game where we're pressing and he's not. And the ball goes to the guy he should have been pressing. And then he sprints over him and dives into a challenge and gets his foot in. And it's like, mate, it's too late. We already know you weren't where you're supposed to be standing. And so I still think, to your point about integrating, Clive, Art, I think with Sterling, there's still a bit that he has to be Mikelified a bit, if I can say it that way, in that there's still clearly talent in there. He's still got some burst. He can still beat a man. He's got shots. He's got the ability to unsettle a back line. I don't think that's gone away. But to be someone Mikel will call on in important situations, and we know this, he's going to have to do that other stuff. And that other stuff, I think we make mistakes as fans in one critical way. I think we treat off the ball, out of possession stuff as just effort. Oh, you just need to try harder. Just try harder, right? And I think that does a disservice to the elite players who were elite out of possession in terms of their understanding of the game, the talent to understand where to be tactically and how to press right and when to trigger. That's more than just effort. So I don't want to just say Sterling's not trying. I think Sterling has to start to connect to the group, to the system, to the ethos, to where he needs to be positionally off the ball. Am I being unfair? Is that looking for a reason not to be more positive on him, or do you see some of that as well?
No, I think that's a fine argument, because when you look at how I think the best example is Martin Odegaard, how he almost made Mikel Arteta's mind up. And that was mainly because he understood timings of your pressing, but also the direction of how you run, curve in your run, so you almost lead a player down a blind alley. And I think that really turned Mikel Arteta's eye, aside from all the playmaking stuff that everyone knew he could do. So with Sterling, I've been kind of like, yeah, you played all right. I haven't been too extreme one way or the other, but I do feel like, there's a bit more connecting that does need to be done, both on and off the ball, because there are moments where even, I guess, he might put a cross in that looks really good, but no one's actually on the end of it. So there are just moments where he zigs when other players are zagging. And I think that's kind of natural with the distribution of his minutes so far. I think he was especially unlucky with the way the Bournemouth game went, because in my view, I don't really know how others viewed it, but he actually did all right against Bournemouth, I felt.
I thought he was our most dangerous looking attacker.
So hopefully, again, the Shakhtar one was one I thought that's a game for him to start on the right and Jesus to start centrally. But I guess we'll have to wait maybe another couple of weeks before we see that again.
But to your point with the Bournemouth game, I thought he looked like our best attacker. But when we went down to 10 men, there's a reason he came off and Trossard came on. And I think it's a trust issue with what the new challenge was going to be in that game. I think if there was a little more trust there, I think we could have been more dangerous had we kept Trossard on than, Sterling on than Trossard. I don't know. What do you think, Clive?
Well, we got the Bournemouth thing wrong. In no team I've seen Arsenal pick did we pick only 3 forward type players, right? So
you mean from the start we got it wrong?
Yeah, we got it wrong, right?
Yeah,
and so,
I agree with that.
We were prioritizing other things, and I thought Sterling was unlucky to come off in that game, and we should have took off. In my opinion, we should have took off maybe Mourinho on that day, and then I moved people back into positions rather than, do things like that. But hey, look, here's what it is. Don't take off a forward when you only got 3 on the pitch, 8 out of 2, I expect to win. So, and so for me, one of the big issues for me, Elliot, I'll be honest with you, I think Sterling, Jesus, and Reece Nelson, and Martinelli, and Trossard are all happier on the left-hand side. And that's the issue we have, right? So, go on, Art, go on.
So, sorry, just on that, because in my head, I was really intrigued when Martinelli played off the right against Everton on the last day of last season.
Again, he was looking at it, wasn't he? He was looking at it.
Yeah. And when Arteta first came in, he played Reece off the right against Chelsea, Leeds. There was another game in there, but I can't remember at the minute. Again, he looked really good. But I spoke to him when he was at Feyenoord, where he played half the season off the left, half the season off the right. He said, I prefer playing off the left, which is where he's playing now for Fulham. And I just think when you have a right footer on the right wing, it completely changes the game. Yeah. And I know Saka's going to play most, like 95% of the time. But if you have someone who's happy to drive on the outside on the right, I think it could be such a valuable weapon for Arsenal.
Yeah, that's the thing we're missing. So we're judging people in not optimal positions. But what I did see yesterday, and again, I watched it this morning to see what it's all about. And I did like the 1-2s they were doing off the sides. And I think that's Sterling's way. I think when he carries it into traffic and he loses it. But when he pops it and goes, and as soon as we get that relationship going, and Jesus did it a few times as well, that's their way of making the right-hand side work. So they need a wall pass, and then they're off. Rather us expect them to go up to them and beat them like Saka does. That's not it. We've got to beat him in 2 phases. And I think that's I saw a little bit of that yesterday, which means with people, and that's how you get your right-hand side rest for Saka, by having that sort of strategy on that side of the pitch. So that's what I saw.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting too, like from Martinelli's standpoint, I think he really likes to get to the byline. Well, if you get to the byline from the right side, then that cutback or that cross can be with your right foot, and I think it can be better. Martinelli's an interesting one for me because I think he does maybe it's the inverse Sterling in a way. He does so many of the things Mikel wants a player to do in that position that's so important for our overall success, but he just doesn't look maybe as dangerous right now at the end of moves as he could. It's going to be an interesting one because I think if I were Raheem Sterling, I'd be looking at that side and saying, if I can get all the other stuff right, I can get more minutes over there. That position is not fully on lock. Maybe it is. Maybe Mikel looks at Martinelli as undroppable. He plays him every time he's fit, and he's certainly worth it, although down the stretch last season, Leo had that position. So what do I know? But yeah, Clive?
I got to say something. I'm going to test it out on you two, right? So when we're talking about Saka, right, as he's grown from that Wolves volley, he's grown from a boy into this Adonis of a young man, right? With Martinelli, it's almost like he's discovered a youth drug. He still looks so young. He still looks so young and quick and energetic. And it's almost like I want him to turn into a man and have that authority and assurance, which I think belies the quality that he has. So I don't want him to be dashing around. I want him to play with calmness and slow people down and then do them on the burst. But really sort of be the 22, 23-year-old you are now. You're not 19 anymore. Does that make sense? I'm testing out on YouTube. I'm not saying to anybody else.
You know how I'd say it? No, just the three of us, just among the three of us. I'd almost call it status anxiety. Like Saka has no status anxiety at this point. He's the star. He's embraced. He's being talked about.
Status over here, Elliot. We say
status anxiety.
I can't have you. I can't have those words coming out your mouth like that. I can't do it.
Look, if we're gonna talk soccer, let's talk soccer. I think there's status anxiety in the sense that like Martinelli, you can see how much it means. And sometimes I think his head goes down when he doesn't quite get it right. He's got immense confidence. I don't want to say that he doesn't, but he was ready, I think, along with Saka to kind of burst out and become the superstar on the left to match the superstar on the right. I don't think that quite has happened yet. And I almost feel like he plays with impatience to make an impact. You know what I mean? Head down, drive to the byline, instead of giving himself that chance to really see what the best opportunity is. He's been taking some shots when passes would be better, making some impulsive decisions when there's time. Obviously, the Liverpool game comes to mind. He wants to beat that man and make that key contribution when that's a moment to hold it up. So I don't want to go too deep on this because I think I want to get a quick Newcastle preview in. So let's move on from that if you're okay, Art, unless you got some. Okay, cool. So let's shift focus to Newcastle. So obviously, they did win their cup tie. So that's a feather in the cap. They beat Chelsea, but it is the League Cup. Obviously, much changed sides for both. Isaac did get a goal, I believe. We, by the way, will have the Eddie Nketiah derby at the Emirates in the next round of the League Cup. So that's one we'll look forward to talking to. But this is an interesting fixture. There's sort of a lot of history here. We had a big setback a couple seasons ago in our top four chase when we went to Newcastle and didn't perform. We've beaten Newcastle at Newcastle. We had the contentious one, obviously, with the push in the back of Gabriel. I don't think there's any love lost between these two teams and clubs at the moment. And Newcastle are not in a great moment. I think it's fair to say defensively, they were poor down the stretch last season. I don't think they look a lot better at that this season. However, they can hurt you going the other way with players like Isaac and Barnes. We know Bruno Guimaraes is going to be out there like he always is against us, trying to injure fellow professionals. So it's 12:30 kickoff, which I actually prefer to being under the lights at St. James's Park. I think when those Newcastle supporters have had all day in the pub and the lights are on, that place can get ferocious. Maybe this will help a little bit with that. Why don't you give me your top of mind thoughts going into the Newcastle game?
Is that for me?
That's for you. Sorry. Yeah, that's a critical component of this whole hosting gig.
No, it's all right. I do actually think the timing is a really important element that people shouldn't underestimate.
You mean the 12:30 kickoff?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I do feel like when Arsenal have gone there in the last few seasons, they've struggled with the night games, and I think St. James's Park is a different animal to even I don't know if it's a risk to say Anfield, because I feel like those are the games that stand out to me. So the Champions League one you mentioned, first 5 minutes, Aaron Ramsdale can't find a short pass. Newcastle really aggressive, force him long, and that sets the tone of the game within 5 minutes. I think something similar happened last season with David Raya, where for goal kicks, Newcastle just placed three attackers on the edge of Arsenal's box so he couldn't go short, forced him long again. And Eddie Howe's I think he's spoken about it after one of those games, about being very deliberate in forcing Arsenal into a game they didn't want to play. Arsenal, of course, have got better at dealing with different types of games, but I think it's probably easier for them to ride a wave when it's earlier in the day and the stadium isn't at the atmosphere as it can be in a night game, like they did when they won 2-0 in the 22-23 season, where I think they almost conceded a penalty in the first 15 minutes, but then Martin Ødegaard scores and the game turns. So my big thought is actually about the kickoff time and how that can set the mood for the game.
You're on mute, mate.
Yep, there it is. Had to happen eventually. I actually, you guys could correct me, but I think there's a Goodison Park quality to Newcastle in that when it's going well, when they're up for it, it is a ferocious atmosphere. But they will turn a little bit if it's not going well. You know, like Liverpool, they'll back their team, and then if it's not going well, they'll just be kind of quiet. But I think Newcastle, I've certainly seen games at St. James's Park where they turn on their team a little bit, you know, where they don't stay behind them.
Different era in the Mike Ashley era, and when there was a lot of
unhappiness. Mike Ashley, there was some internecine warfare going on at Newcastle. So maybe I'm bringing older thoughts in, you know, Newcastle players fighting each other on the pitch kind of stuff, if we want to go back. But I do think that you can take the crowd out of it, and that is a critical component of how you want to play there. You know, I just look at them, Clive, and I see a team that defensively is not as good as it needs to be to handle us. And so would you go blow for blow with them? Is that where we can win this game, just by putting pressure on a defensive unit that's conceded a lot of goals?
Without looking at their goal numbers, I just look at their fullbacks, right? And I look at Dan Burn, I look at Livramento, who's not bad, but he was rested last night, so he's not bad. He's quite sharp, but he's not really kicking on like he could have done. Didn't have that terrible ACL at Southampton when I think even Arsenal were looking at him, right? So he's a player that's got a little bit of quality about him. But Dan Burn, and if they go Lewis Hall ain't going to work for them, son. I mean, he's had 20 minutes to just stretch his hamstrings. They're in a bit of trouble on that side if we can get the ball there. Well, they do have those three midfielders who I do respect in Joel Linton, Bruno, and Tonali. And so the game's going to be won in there. And what we do in there is going to be really interesting. How we can get our four around that three and dominate that. You know, and because Bruno sat on his backside yesterday, so he's going to play rested. And Eddie Howe's not stupid, right? He knows where he needs to get at Arsenal. He's going to try to ruffle us in the middle of the pitch. And what did we do last night? Declan Rice didn't move, did he? Didn't move. He rested. So the battle is in that midfield three to get it out to our wide men. When it gets out to our wide men, they're in trouble. There is no way they can hold us if we can win that internal battle in the inside. So what we do in there is going to be quite interesting. And I'm not sure who's going to play, what system we're going to play. Are we going to invert from a right back position? You know, are we going to do that? I'm not sure what we're going to do, but that box four we have in there is going to be key, and what that looks like is going to be key. But what I can say is we have the bodies for this battle. We absolutely do have the bodies for this battle. And so whether we decide to do it at the start, whether we decide to do it at the end is really important. But now with our newfound Sterling and Jesus thing, we can also end the game with fresh wide men, right? So I think that's going to be the key for the game for me. What do you think, Hart? You got your hand out there. You're bursting to talk.
We don't have the press conference quotes yet for this game, but we have them from last night. And Mikel, who loves the mind games, made some comment like, we lost Gabby and White, so we had to rotate some minutes around in the Preston game. Everything I've understood is that they're going to be fine for this game, but do you want to do some Big J journalism for us and let us know if we're going to have those players?
I think those two will be fine. What I was going to say was, even though I mentioned how aggressive Newcastle were at Arsenal goal kicks last season, it wasn't as if they were pressing. It was more from a perspective on containing Arsenal. And that was one of the 5 games Arsenal failed to score in the Premier League last season. And it was because of that, the space between the midfield and the front line from Newcastle. So Arsenal couldn't get anything through that midfield. From what I remember, it was Declan Rice and Jorginho in midfield that day. And nothing was going through the centre. So I think that is a really important, objective for Arsenal. How do they actually want to control the area of the pitch? Will be really, really interesting to see.
Well, stay with you for a second there then, Art, because there's an interesting decision for Mikel to make. In theory, we could have White, Saliba, Gabriel, and Timber. I think there's a chance that that's going to be our back line for this game. And if that's correct, this is the first game where he really has to decide, is it Partey, Rice, and Marino? Is it Partey, Rice, and Kai? Is it Marino, Rice, and Kai? Like, this is where I think he's got to kind of decide what qualities he wants in the midfield and how he wants that alchemy to look. I mean, I think you can go up to St. James's Park and say, I want to be big and physical again, kind of like he did at Bournemouth, right? And pick Rice, Marino, and Kai, right? Do that 4-2-4 type thing again. But how do you leave Partey out the way he's been playing? So the midfield, to me, feels like a really interesting window into how Mikel wants to play this game. Do you have a thought on what he should do or what he might do?
Yeah, so before that Bournemouth game, I actually felt that he was going to go with Marino, Partey, and Rice, but the way I envisaged it was different. I felt it would be Rice as more of a box-to-box off the right of the trio, with Marino on the left. He kind of flipped it the other way around.
Yeah.
Just because I felt from the right, that's where Rice has played for England and linked up quite well with Bukayo Saka, where there's been quite a lot of those one-touch interchanges that can be really helpful. And I was surprised that even with that personnel, that's not the way Arteta chose to play it against Bournemouth. So that would be the way I would go if he decides to play a free against Newcastle. But one thing I actually asked Mikel about before this block of games was how he sequences kind of game plans for certain periods of time. And after trying the free and going back to the 4-2-4 or 4-4-2, however you want to use it, I wouldn't be surprised if he just stays with that for this game, especially with Odegaard maybe coming back next week. So I think a 4-4-2 with maybe Rice and Marino could make sense. But yeah, if it was a free, I'd go Rice off the right with Marino off the left and Partey holding.
Interesting. And you heard it, by the way, just confirmed by Art Roche of The Athletic on our podcast that Odegaard is back next week. So thank you for that, Art. I've stitched you up there. I apologize. It is an interesting one, Clive. Do you think there's any possibility that Inter is in his head? It's Inter on Wednesday. I don't think that will inform this selection at all. I'll tell you what some Arsenal fans will want. They'll say to hell with it. Rice, Marino, Ethan, give it to us. Give us the young kid running around there at St. James's Park. He's earned it. I don't think anybody wants to see another 0-0, another drab sort of nothing of a football match. Mikel may have thoughts of the Bournemouth game in his mind too, where the selection didn't, even though we went down to 10 men, at least for the first 30 minutes, it didn't seem like it was really clicking. So are we going to go for it a little bit more, or you think he's going to still just try to win the physical battle and let the game develop from there?
Well, I do think the Inter game and the Chelsea game will come into his mind. We have 3 away games in 7-8 days. And why wouldn't you think about, you got everyone available, why wouldn't you think about the game plan for each one and who you're going to select, right? And on a particular day. Maybe Marino may suit the European pace a little bit more. Maybe that's a game he starts. I do agree, but I like Hart's left and right behind party thing. And what we have to think about, what I didn't think about, when we're on the ball, I think that looks really nice. Get Rice on the right-hand side with his mate Saka, little 1-2, underlap, overlaps, lovely stuff. When we're off the ball, who's going to be in that front two? Who's going to be in that front two press? And when I saw Marino in that front two press at Bournemouth, I went, this ain't working. This isn't working. That's not who he is. He's ahead of the ball too much. He needs to see it. He needs to compete. He needs to contest. So do I want Rice in the front two press? I'm not sure I do. So I go back to the 4-2-4 again. It's just a matter of what we do at fullback sides regarding on health. I just like it. If Odegaard's not playing, I just like that. I just like that system. I've only not seen it. It was at Bournemouth, and I didn't like it. But I've only got half an hour. Maybe it would have got better in the second half if we stayed at 11 men. So this system really works for me. So we create partnerships rather than triangles. So yeah, I'm interested to see what he does. But the good thing is we have bodies available again. And that's the good thing. We got a break with Gabriel's injury, potentially, and we're getting White back and we're looking after him. We're looking after Partey. We're looking after people a little bit better. Havertz's goal last night I thought was an important moment. Jesus' goal was an important moment. They started to get the spring in their step. Rice is getting the spring in his step. And people say, you've got to win against Liverpool. Well, my opinion was where we were in our health at that time, and with suspension as well, I thought it was going to be a tough one. But Saturday morning, we got to win. We got to win, and we got to win against Chelsea as well. And that resets us nicely for when everyone's back, and then we can really push on into the Christmas period.
Keep waiting for these easy fixtures I hear about. They keep not getting any easier. Newcastle away, Inter away, Chelsea away, another international break. I mean, the good news is we have that international break coming so we can watch some of the football we love. I'll tell you this much right now. I would take a heavy win, a big win on Saturday. I don't know if you would, Art, but I would. And then the most disgusting, despicable handshake, 0-0, ball never leaves the center circle on Wednesday. Fine by me. Fine by me. Just a good old-fashioned managerial handshake before the match. 0-0. We're both fine. We both get through in the top 8 when it's all said and done. Your final thoughts on the Newcastle game, and Art, could there be a wild card? I think Jesus in that Trossard role, if we're going to go 4-2-4, as we've talked about, that could be an interesting one. Ethan getting a chance to stand there with a couple of men protecting him in Rice and Marino if he wants to pick them in midfield. Any shuffling of the pack? Any surprises? What's your sort of last predictions here for Newcastle?
Yeah, sorry if I'm a bit pessimistic, but I don't think it's one where Mikel will try anything radical.
Okay. That's not pessimistic. We just want to win the game.
Yeah, I just think Jesus, even though he played well, didn't really warrant a start after that in the Premier League. Trossard plays that role much better, I'll say.
Extremely better. That's fine. Say it. We're all friends here.
And I just think aside from that, I wouldn't make too many changes. I think that 4-4-2 works fine the way it is. So I'd go with it.
Yeah. I think I probably agree. I don't think there'll be a lot of surprises in this one. I do think it'll be Martinelli off the left, Kai, at center forward / midfield with Trossard next to him probably, and Saka off the right, White, Saliba, Gabriel, and Timber is my guess. Really the only question then is, do you wind up with Marino and Rice or Rice and Partey? And that's sort of what I think will be the question. I don't think he's going to try what he did at Bournemouth again, where he goes with 3 players, as Clive said, behind the ball, midfielders. I mean, maybe he will, but I don't think that's what we'll see. So the good news is it should be a nice, comfortable win with no controversy or injuries or anything like that, because that's all in our rearview mirror now. I'll tell you what I would take. I would take a 3-0 with 3 dodgy penalties in our favor. I'd take that. That'd be fine with me. Maybe two red cards for kicking the ball away for Newcastle. The one thing we do know is that Bruno Guimaraes will commit lots of professional fouls with impunity and see no cards for them. That is the one thing we can predict with confidence. He always seems to have it out for our guys. All right, I think we should leave it there. That's enough for Thursday. We'll have power rankings tomorrow. Please join us for that. Please sign up for Patreon or Apple subscriptions, or don't. That's the key. Please do it or don't. Just be here with us because we love you and we're glad you're here. I do want to give a huge thanks to you, Art, for joining us. You can find Art on Twitter at Art de Roche, but obviously you can read his great stuff covering the academy and all things Arsenal at The Athletic. Thanks, Art.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, it was fun. We'll definitely do it again. Clive, unfortunately, stuck with me, so we're definitely going to do it again. Clive's on Twitter, Clive PFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter. And we love you. And we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, Newcastle 0.